Good morning at 6 a.m. and it is not only a brand new week, but it's also a fantastic brand new month. The month of September, the 9th month of the year. Thank you so much for choosing to wake up with us here on Eswatini TV Kusile Breakfast Show to kickstart your day. What a blessing it has been, not Sile, to make it into the 9th month of the year. What do you think?
I feel really blessed. You know, it's not something that I take very lightly. You know, it's quite a blessing to have to exist, to have lived, in fact, from January to now. You know, if I were in church, I would probably give a testimony right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of testimonies, I think it is testimonial, and it just hit me now that we had a conversation 27 September 2024. It was our first interview as Eswatini TV with the Minister for ICT, Honorable Savannah Mazia, on the digital transformation of the Kingdom of Eswatini. Exactly 12 months later, she'll be here in the very same studio in Eswatini TV talking all the latest developments that have since eventuated under her leadership, of course. We do remember that she did come back for a second sit down in January this year where we were talking the Google partnership, but a lot has since happened after that. We have seen government in your hand. We have seen the conversation around Udacity, coding school, the ICT hub, everything really that we want to talk about today is the latest that has happened under the Ministry of ICT as the digital transformation of Eswatini is still, ongoing under her charge, of course, as well as the whole ministry. So that is going to happen this morning at 6:30. So stay tuned for that conversation.
Just to fill you in on this headline making news from outside the country, a 6.0 magnitude earthquake has struck eastern Afghanistan at a relatively shallow depth of 8 kilometers. At least 20 people have been killed and more than 100 are being treated at hospitals for injuries. Dozens of houses are under the rubble, and it is feared that the death toll could rise. Coming back to the program, with youth unemployment in Eswatini remaining high, cooperatives have been touted as a powerful collective vehicle for economic empowerment. They promise not just job creation, but also financial inclusion and social cohesion for young people. Yet questions remain about their reach, sustainability, and relevance in a fast-changing economy. In today's conversation with the Eswatini National Youth Cooperative Alliance, we interrogate the role of youth co-ops and the opportunities they present for the next generation. But first, we'll have a look at what is making headlines in local print this morning. On the Eswatini Observer front page this morning, Libutho displays loyalty and pride. In the image, you'll see the Umbutho Kwazetiveni, Prince Banzile, from Inkanyeti Regiment of Ngabezweni, managing to shoot and kill Lishongololo at Timlaula Nature Reserve. This was during the Butimba ceremony commissioned by His Majesty King Mswati III. Another headline, ESPRA demands showdown talks. Regulator convenes high-level meeting with Ministry of Health over suspended tenders worth 1 billion emalangeni. In a story on page 2, ENPF shift could trigger fiscal fallout. That's according to an expert that you'll probably get to learn of from page 2 of the Eswatini Observer. And community police, 3 others killed in one day. The Eswatini Electricity Company reports increase in copper theft in winter.
We look at the back end of this publication. This is the Eswatini Observer Sports headlines, and the top story there is 8-bet Trade Fair Cup. Big guns crash out. Malandi stunned defending champions Buffaloes. Eswatini United send bull packing. And then Green Mamba spoil Manzini Wanderers return. Another story is it has been a rude welcome for Wanderers. This is after a year's absence from football. Manzini Wanderers yesterday returned to the field of play for the first time since May 2024. In other stories, some Highlanders fans celebrate defeat. And the question is Mbamane Highlanders a club at war with itself? In other stories, Swazi Warrior returns stronger. The 12th edition of the Swazi Warrior proved a true test of fitness and endurance as it took center stage at the Eswatini Fitness Center in Matapa on Saturday morning.
On the Eswatini Daily News front page this morning, Eswatini leads digital innovation dialogue at India-Africa Business Forum. In other stories, the Eswatini Water Services Corporation has embarked on a strategic initiative to develop a comprehensive 5-year business plan to guide its operational and capital investment decisions. Concurrently, a tariff review assessment is required to evaluate the implications of the business plan on existing tariff structures and the new tariff structure to be proposed. In another story there, Vula Masango pupils shine with innovative robotic bird at a trade fair. Talk about digital transformation 2.0. In another headline there, I will serve with integrity, impartiality. That's according to ex-DPM Themba Masuku. This is after he expressed deep gratitude to His Majesty King Mswati III following his appointment as head of mission for the SADC Electoral Observation Mission to the Republic of Malawi.
It's shocks, thrills in 8-bet Trade Fair Cup, and the bigger they come, the harder they fall. Defending champions, Young Buffaloes, Mbabane Highlanders and Manzini Wanderers all eliminated in the last 16th stage of the annual tour named as 8-Bet Trade Fair Cup, which lives up to its razzmatazz. And it was a rude welcome for Mam Keys. Welcome to Eswatini. And then Al Ali terminate Riviero's contract after 7 matches. These are the top stories this morning from the Eswatini Daily News as well as the Eswatini Observer. It is 7 minutes after 6. We'll go for a net break. Start with Janet Nzaba. This is Swati.
Eswatini TV has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Eswatini Communications Commission. We are committed to reporting news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that does not amount to hate speech or the description of gratuitous violence or explicit sex. For any complaints of our programming, please contact us on 2411-9600 or email info@eswatinitv.co.za. You can also contact the Eswatini Communications Commission on 2406-7000 or write a letter to ECCOM on PO Box 7811 Mbabane. Email address is info@ecom.org.sz.
Nguvusele ngolo nomuhle nathi tindzaba tecala lisuku. Imisimvo leyenteka emimangweni lehlukene kuleli lefaka ekhatsi kubhidlitwa kwemiti nemabhizinisi isendela phansi sitfundi selive leSwatini emhlabeni. Lokhu kushiwo ngusihlalo welibandla likweluleka liqoqo Paul Dlamini nakacocisana netinsatheli talomsakato mayelana ukuthi engabe letinkinga letishaya emaswati esimeni sekwesela tingacatululeka kanjani. Dlamini uthi kube wonke umuntu losepholini usebenta ngekulandzela kahle umthetho-sisekelo welive ngabe lokhu akwendeki.
Sethukile nje kubona tigemegeme kulandza letigemegeme ke sithi asesimane sekhude Nkosi yami emaswati akhe sithombe lesihle ngelive kungabi netinto letinje ngoba sikhatsi lesilalapho live lakha khona umnotho live futhi likhuluma ngelunjinjo lifuna kunjinja lento timpilo tibe ngcono kepha ke sithe singakacizi lutho seva ukuthi embolonjeni khona losabhidlitelo esitolo sakhe sathi sizawuna kuloku sesiva ngala itulo kancesi nakhona umuntu sobhidlitelwa indlu umuntu abukwe akhe lendlu azacisha icese bese iyabhidlitwa live alivumelana naloku bekunene lelive latiwa ngekuthula nekwekuthi ke umthetho awusebenze njengoba kufanele asiphikisana nawo kepha nje ke kuneti tikluba tigaba lethathwako na utawenda into ungeke nje bese umuntu ngathi uyamlaya I-constitution yelive ithi nakubonakala ukuthi umuntu kufuna asunduke noma endiweni kunetinyathelo lethathwako phinze futhi ubuke ukuthi ase umbulala yini utawuphinza kuchubeka phile yini lela ufuna kummixa khona kufanele ukuthi na ulandela lo mthetho impilo ibe ngcono kunalela kuyo namuhla lelive njoba ngikhuluma nje inkosi ibheke tivakashi letinengi tayo sikhathi lesi sekwakha umnotho eveni kunyalo nje lo sikhuluma kunebudimba ishow icalile masinyane kuqala umhlanga siyengqwaleni siyacela nje ukuthi bekunene emabandla abobabe tikhulu bantu abenkosi akasebenzele into ngebunono asebenzele into ngekucabangela umuntu ukuthi kusasa lelive bafuna kulimix up nje sikucelako nje kuthule eveni nakubonakala ukuthi kufanele kukhulunywe ngesizotha kube kuhle kulalelwane kuhlonishwane.
Njengoba leSwatini linemisebenzi leminyenti lekhangane tivakashi tangaphandle kwakuleli eMaswati kufanele abe netindlela letinsha tekuzuza kule micimbi lokusho imvuna itekuvakasha kuleli umhlenisha Jane Ismelane emcimbini wetidududu Iswazi Rally lobanjelwe eRiders Ranch esitokotho imvuna ithi lokhu kungasita ekutheni live leSwatini lifinyelele emgomeni walo wekungenisa tivakashi letitigidzi letimbili letitawushiya imali letigidzi letimbili emalangeni ngeminyaka wa 2027.
Yiningi imali lengene eveni imali ingene ngekubhadala emagedeni babhadala imoto tabo tangaphandle tekungena yangena ngekubhadala imali yetindiza ngabaqale kungena la kangwane ngelesine sukela ngelesine kutaze kube kukusasa labanye bakhona abahambi batawuhlalela nemhlanga kunalabathungako ke labete nemishina yabo yekuthunga ungacabanga ukuthi indzawo lenjengalena kungaba indzawo yekuthengisa kudla netshwala kodwa la uyabona kunalabete nemishina yabo yekuthunga ibhizinisi ikhona ngetindlela letinengi la kangwane kiyo yonke info uyabuka ukuthi mine ngingayakha kanjani imali kule bhizinisi le.
Carlos Paiva longumnikati we-Riders Ranch aphindze abe ngulomunye wabasunguli balomdlalo wetidududu Iswazi Rally uthi lo mcimbi awusasiwe weleSwatini nemave lelakhelene nawo nje kuphela kodwa sewukhanga wonke umhlaba.
Lomunye usuka ePortugal nase-Thailand bese kunalabanye labasuka e-England bakhona labasuka ekhashane kufika la for this event. Ngathi kuna 3 from America, from the north of Mozambique, ngathi from Tanzania, baqale kwehla labantu. Usasa badobuyela bese baqale kubuyela baye as far as Tanzania kubuyela. So luhambo vele lukhulu kakhulu ngalento.
Labanye betivakashi lababagibeli betidududu bathi kude lokungabavimba ukuthi bawungenele lo mcimbi njengoba nobetilimi tingafanani. Kodwa buhle belive nekujabula kwenta ukuthi babe munye neMaswati.
It's not about the bikers, it's about the culture, it's about being together. It doesn't matter which language we speak, but as long as we're here, we speak all the language. I can see. We love this event. Most lads from Mozambique. Yeah, we don't miss it. Even if it's raining, we're here. You know what happened? I came with a heater because last time was very cold.
I love this event. I love Swaziland. I love this event, biking events, okay?
Lo mcimbi weSwazi Rally lese ubanjwe emahlandla lange-32 wakhe emathuba esikhashana emsebenzi langama-500 kanti labasebenta ngalokuphelele bange-50. Kubika Mbongwadube na Fortune Dlangamandla esitokotho.
Bathanzi bemcimbi wetidududu Iswazi Rally bathi kuyabathokozisa kuba seSwatini lo mcimbi bayawujabulela ngelanga lekugcina la lo mcimbi lebe bawungenele lababuya kulamanye emave bathi baphatheke kahle eSwatini.
It was worth the drive as always. Besla last year, sila this year, akunayigame kwezimbi. It went well from the beginning to the end, but now we're just dealing with fatigue. Siyabonga eSwatini siphinde sibuye futhi.
Change of environment, it's very nice, and ukuhlala endaweni whereby awukho comfortable as usendlini kwakho. It's nayi mnandi. Mele ufake ithende, mele ufake umbhede. Ema-toilet uyalinda, mele uyogeza uyalinda. Yizo izinto ezenza ukuthi ibe more fun because you learn now and then, every day uyafunda ezinye izinto ezintsha.
Ngithola imnandi. Mina I'm always here. This is home for me. I attend annually. So it gets better each and every year. But overall, no, we are happy. We are exhausted now. We're about to make our way back home. But Leo exhaustion is worth the fun and the good time that we had. So
it was a first time experience. So yeah, I did enjoy.
Namanje nje ungibona anginalivi liphelile ile nto le yerally. Liphele dududu. Kumnandi lobulami mina ngibathe Eswatini benta njani kanti yena.
Eswatini is always the best. You understand? It's always the best, whereby we are being treated with so much activities, you understand? So we always love Eswatini.
Anzibe kumnanzi hayi sobuya futhi next year. Ngathi ngashaya enye futhi this year. Yabo, siphinde sibuye.
It was amazing. Friday and Saturday, and also going up today. I hope it's going to be great. And we've been eating and drinking and having a good time, and we hope for the best all the time, every year.
Mnanzi. Yonke into nje for mina, what you call the way baba participate ngakhona, the way abayenza ngakhona izinto no 100.
No, I think
enjoy the training.
10, yeah, I'm 15 years. Attending the event.
The spinning part, yeah, be right kakhulu.
Sihlalo weSwaziland Carlos Private uthi bayalibona lisasasala lo mcimbi batawuchubeka neqinisekisa ukuthi lo mcimbi uba mkhulu yonke iminyaka.
Dynamics of the rally seem to be changing quite a bit, and every year what we're experiencing is a lot of new people are coming. It's never the same complete crowd sort of a thing. Sukela ekaleni into yokupromote tourism. Gepa tourism ye motorsport netitutu tourism. So vele siyabambisana nge-tourism kepha fanele siphinde sihlangane sibone ukuthi singendani ukuthi ibe ngcono le relationship yethu. Yona vele ikhona i-strong kepha fanele sizame kuyiqinisa some more. Le space sikhona makudinga ukuthi sibe ne-expansion singa-expanda ngoba le ndzawo ikhona inengi. Kepha we need to think about these things.
Kunatsatse lokugula ngengqondo wakulenye yetindzawo letiselibonjeni lotsi wataliswa ngobabe wakhe lamtala kweminyakeni leyengcile. Lotsatse uthi kumanje unemfana nababe wakhe naye umfana ukhubatekile ngandlela thide.
Lotsatse uthi babe wakhe wawucala lo mkhuba eminyakeni leyengcile njengoba umntwanabo sewuneminyaka lesiphohlongo. Noma-ke asemuva ngekukhula ngengqondo umntwana, kodwa-ke uthi umntwana wababe wakhe. Gogo namkhulu walotsatse-ke bathi umntukulu wabo wahamba avakashele babe wakhe wabuya amabokoboko emanceba ashaywe ngumfati wababe wakhe ngokuthi upotile ukuthi babe ulala naye.
Ngase uyabuya make ngalelinye ilanga uyamtshela lo mntwana kwekuthi ema babe na uhamba uye emsebentini uye besolala nami. Wathatha-ke induku-ke lo make washaya lo ntombatana ngekuthi ulala nababo wakhe. Wase uyabuya-ke lo mntwana, nakabuya lo mntwana shothi-ke khona abantwana balakhaya labakumathapha bathi-ke bayihambisa le ndzaba bayisa emaphoyiseni.
Uyavuma bakangeke asho ukuthi akede alande impahla temntwana. Bakangeke futhi asho manje athi akahambe ayomhashela.
Mani ngamane nisite lapha ukuthi umbe kukhona lebangakuthola bamane basitakale elikakhulu nje lo mntwana lamgonile akakhulumi akahambi.
Simfuneke samthola umsolwa kulendzaba locele kungavele etithombeni. Intsatselike yalomsakato yamphosa-ke ngemibuto kudama kuthola ukuthi ngabe vele kuliciniso yini lokukhulunywako. Kulokunyeke umsolwa bekagilwa ngemajobo akhe.
Bayangiphoqa mntanami ake ngiko le ngikusho ngithi kube kuyentiwa lokho ukuthi kuke kuthathwe ingadi yalo mntwana kuthathwe yami ukuthi ngimi yini vele.
Manje uthi ngwena kungatholakala ukuthi ngowe sekuthini?
Angathi-ke umthetho ukuthi ungangithini lapho ngaloko ukuthi mina kude le
Wena nembeza wakho umsulwa wena.
umsulwa kimi.
Ngafisha nje bayakusukela ukuthi wena wayogibela tika umntwana wamgelisa tika.
Cha ngiyaxolisa kakhulu kuNkulunkulu wami.
Uxolisa kuthini?
Ukuthi kube nenkulumo le kanjena nje la vele nami ingakha ukuthi ngingaphili kahle nanyalo ngiyadesaba lokho ukuthi mina ngalela nemntwanami.
Lo mndeni-ke uyawasola namaphoyisa ngokuhudula tinyawo ekusebenteni lendzaba njengoba umsolwa solo ujangaza ngaphandle. Lisekela lokhulumela emaphoyisa noSipho Mnguni ucele ukuthi aniketwe ligama lelelo phoyisa beliphenya lendzaba kude bayilandzelele kahle bafike kuwo-ke umnyombo wayo. Liphini landvulankulu impungatho Kusile Dladla naselitsinza ngalendzaba nalo lethembisa ukuthi balehhovisi batoyilandzelela masinyane lendzaba kutholakale emanga nemaciniso endzaba nebantfwana-ke basitakale. Lobikako nguGiyani Msibi.
Umshana ukhala ngekuthi malume wakhe akabaphathi kahle yena nebantwana bakubo kulandzela ukuthi kushone makwabo. Lo malume lakhala ngayo lo mshana uthi akusilo liqiniso lelo kodwa ngulo mshana wakhe longafuni yena lakhaya kubo kaSihlongonyane.
Lo mshana lo ngitakhona methula usibangi 5 ngumake wakhe kanakabutwe kusabayilene ekhaya kubo usibakhulela khona la ekhaya bomama wakhe kaSihlongonyane kanti bake bahlala ekhaya kibo kodwa nakhona abatfokotanga ngembatfo yakhona.
Ekufikeni kwamalume longibhuti wamake ngekuthi umfana babe lomkhulu wamake ayizange impilo seyiphindze ibe mnanzi. Wathi nakafika wathi utovuza kojanyalo kude nje kukhulumisana labaleni.
Nesikhathi tinzazelitelo umsakato lifika la khaya kaSihlongonyane luve kamtholi lo malume longihlahla Sihlongonyane losolwa ngilomshana wakhe. Indvodzana yanhlanhla ithe baba wayo akekho yasekhipha inombolo yakhe elicingo unakatsinzwa nhlanhla uthi iphendulela kanje.
Ngoye longangisoni kule mnakeni. Balabanye angifuni kubona abashana bami bayathi ukuthi mina ngingimaki wabo futhi lapha ekhaya ngizange sengibacose kwayena angizange sengimcose ngimvulele emanti lapha ngathi akakho emanti empompini wawadruba wahamba wakhe emanti emfuleni. Umentela konke akuduba angangamcoshe kona lapha ekhaya. Yena akafuni mina lapha ekhaya. Lengeke kwenteke ekhaya ngicoshe mina ekhaya kithi la ngitalwa khona.
Tumsani Dlamini losikhulumela abantwana benkosi ekutsimleni ubeka kanjena.
Ulungile makwaba ngabalwa kodwa hayi lo mntukulu lo mntwana. KukaSihlongonyana la. Lo malume longiyena thengisile kusekhaya kubo. Mina ukukhala kwabo kufana nokuthi nje uthele emanti emhlana wedada.
Indvuna yemcuba yasemphakathi ekutsimleni Rogers Mamba yona ibeka kanje ngalendzaba lapha ekhaya kaSihlongonyane.
Ibandla-ke esangweni lakhipha isijubo lesithi bakaSihlongonyane ababuyele emuva bayohlala endlini kagogo balungise lokhu lokukhalwa ngako labangaboni ngasolinye ekubuyiseni umhlabathi endlunkulu. Sishito njalo sagcizelela silibandla lasesangweni ngokuthi lolo thelwe nguSihlongonyane Nhlanhla wakaNcamphalala asekeme naye kuchubeka ngoba vele kusede umhlabathi labanawo banaSihlongonyane kuze kube isikhathi lapho khona libandla ngekuthunywa ngumntwana enkosi imphelave ekutsimleni seliyile la yawubusisa lokuthi cha umntwana enkosi osithumile uthi aside wethula umthwalo nangwakaNcamphalala singakakwendi lokho libandla lagcizelela ukuthi abeme bakaSihlongonyane. Kepha ukuthi kusenjalo saphinde sathola sebaqhamuka bakhala ngoba kufaka ikhathi nebakaZubuko lababo malukadala baleka Sihlongonyane nabo lababibithekako ngalendzaba kusinabo babafati bakhona nje kaSihlongonyane abatange bathinzeke ngalendzaba leseyenteka lapha ekhakhabo kaSihlongonyane la kunalaba tukulu babo khona labathi malume kuSihlongonyane. Bonke-ke kwathiwa nasebacedzile bakaSihlongonyane kungena endlini kagogo babobuke sebalanza bakaZubuko bahlala nabo phansi babuye endlunkulu sebaletha sijubo ukuthi baphuma endlini kagogo bavumelene ukuthini ngalokuba khona kwanhlanhla Silongonyane lapha.
Nakathinzwa ngelicingo umciniseli Ncamphalala lothengiselwe indzawo ngenhlanhla Silongonyane uthi yena wakhipha inkomo nasendlunkulu sekushoda ukuthi afaselwe lifindo nje kuphela kodwa uthi sovele ucalile kwakha lobikako ngumfortune dlanga amandla isekusimleni.
Uboshelwe amanye amacala umsolwa lo shaywe sive kulandzela ukuthi simsole ukuthi unguMichael Hlatshako lofunelwa licala lekubulala Tifezile Gwebu lo wathunjwa wasotholakala ajujwe inhloko. Lisekela lemchumanweni semaphoyisa kanye nesive Assistant Superintendent Nosipho Mnguni likhanmela sento seMaswati sekushaya abantu lesisuke sicabanga ukuthi babomsolwa emacaleni lasuke aphenywa ngemaphoyisa. Mnguni uchaza kabanti ngalokuboshwa kwalendvodza.
Lokukhona lokwendekile likhona vele lijaha lelineminyaka lengu-24 lasendzaweni yakalomahasha lapho litalwa khona lelitholwe madvodza endzaweni yakhona ngaseJericho shothi kusakwanamuhla. Nabalithola lijaha shothi bathethe nabalibuka balikhanze ngathi lifana nalomnye umsolwa lofunekako kulenye indzaba lapho khona kwalahleka umntwana wagcina atholakele sekasishile emhlabeni. Babeseke labo bantu ke nabamthola sebacabanga ukuthi nguye lo jaha lofunekako base-ke sebayamthinza kodwa ke akukabi ngiloku kubi kakhulu base bayamthatha bagcine bamikise kiwo wona emaphoyisa ke abesayafika ayamkhulumisa lona wekunene kwagcina kukhonzakala ukuthi cha akusuye lo msolwa longiyena afuneka kulendzaba yemfana lo wagcina asishiye emhlabeni kodwa ke naye sigcine sithi nasisamphenya sase siyathola ukuthi naye kuneke akakhe emacala kumbe lafuneka wona kodwa ke akasiwo alendzaweni lapho kumbe bamthole khona la bese kahlala khona kodwa ke nabo ufunelwe emacala kumbe lawenda endzaweni yakalomahasha lapho kungikhona lapho atalelwa khona. Sithanza kusho nje ukuthi eMaswatini siyabonga kakhulu lokuthi siyathi lokuthi bayasibambisa ngoba vele siyathi ukuthi kude lesingakusebenta bangakasisidi. Siyacela futhi ukuthi abachubeke nalomoya lo muhle kodwa ke lesikushoko sithi phela nangabe kukhona lesinimtfolile lenimsola ukuthi kumbe kukhona lokho lokubula kwendile mniketeni emaphoyiseni ningabe sikumbe seniyamshaya seniyamlimata ngoba ngaleyo ndlela kukhanza ukuthi sekudaleka lamanye amacala. Sikhuluma nje cha lona sowusetandleni tawo emaphoyisa akalomahasha lapho ke ayophendulela emacala lawenda khona endzaweni yakalomahasha kodwa ke sithi asiqiniseke esiveni ukuthi cha akusuye lona msolwa lesimfuna lokuthiwa nguMichael kumbe lebekathinzeka endzaweni yokuthi yikulimala kwaye umfana lebekuthiwa nguFezile.
Kukhula kwezinga lemncintiswano wetemgidvo yemasiko kuleli kuniketa lithemba lokuthi kuthula kanye nenhlonipho kutochubeka even Eswatini. Lokusho nguMandla Shongwe longusihlalo welibandla lelichuba umncintiswano wetemasiko kuleli embukisweni walonyaka. Shongwe bekaxoxa netinsatheli talomsakato ngesikhathi kuchubeka lomgcizelwano lobuka likhona etinhlangothini letahlukene kutemigidvo emasiko lobanjwe ngaphansi kwesiqubulo lesithi sigcama ngemasiko ethu.
Lo mncintiswano lobanjwa njalo ngeminyaka lonyaka usekelwe ngemali lengu-150,000 emalangeni kanti ucutshwa ngokubambisana kwenhlangano yahulumende lebukete emasiko kuleli i-Eswatini National Arts and Culture Council, inkampani yakaMola Sport kanye nenhlangano kunotha kwamasiko. Mandla Shongwe longusihlalo wenhlangano yemigidvo yesintho yeSwatini uchaza ngalokubukwako ekuchutselaneni kwalamaqembu.
I-theme yale competition sigatsile ukuthi ayifake etinkhulumeni takhe noma asabongelela noma nakahlabelela nako lokuhlabelela siyadzinga lokuthi lologidzako ahlabelela angabe sewuyathula nje. Siyayibuka futhi nemvunulo ukuthi imvunulo uvunule kahle yini. Siyawabuka emandla noma umfutho wayo le team. Tandla tivumelana nemtimba, tinyawo tivumelana nemtimba, kuphindze futhi kube bete lo muntu losafuna kugidza ethimini akhombise ngathi yena sofuna kugidza kahle kwendlula bonke labantu.
Lesinye sesive lebesibukela lo mncintiswano sithi sithokoza kakhulu ngawo futhi siyabafundzisa abantu abaso ngetemasiko kanti lesinye sikhalanga kungalitholi lithuba lekuba ingcenye yemigidvo yetemasiko ekukhuleni kwaso.
Le ndlela labagidza ngayo iyenta abantu bajabule njengami nje njengoba bese sengithathekile nje lapha.
Ukugidza kahle umsimento wethu thina eMaswati. Mina nje ngikhule ngigidza kakhulu ngihlanganisa ukuthi kuyasihlanganisa thina eMaswati.
Kuningi kakhulu bengikuthatha ngalo mgidvo wemasiko cause kuyisifundisa ukuthi kufuna siphathe kahle Kuyashukumisa phinze. Nje kumnanzi kakhulu vele shem. Kakhulu nami ngiyafisa nje ukujoyina ngibe part of.
Ngiyathintheka kakhulu ngizenza nje yathi kube ngaba nalo lithuba maybe nami ngakhona lengikwendako namuhla ngabe maybe ngiyakhompyutha nabanye lengakhompyutha nabo.
Layisukumisa ngalokho semthethweni kusekelwa ngemali kwalomncintiswano walonyaka evikini leliphelile indvuna yetemasiko umhlonishwa Bunganzima yagcizelela ukuthi itemasiko tinesandla lesibande ekuthuthukiseni umnotho welive njengoba takha amathuba emisebenzi tiphindze tifundzise ngenhlonipho. Kubika Mbonga Dube kaManzini.
Ngaleto siyatephetha ngolumhleti indzaba tifukanyalo ekseni sasalkhefu nasibuya ihlelo nesifiso utawuxoxisana nendvuna yelitiko letekuchumana hlala nathi.
Befakatshela yona khona butsotsi lobukhona ufuna kwendiwa la bekusolo ungashinji ngani nango ngombuto wami kodwa sesiyabona late la ukuthi bafuna kula kukhona lapha sibamba khona kunenhloso mina ngitelwa vele kuna provident fund na pension fund uthi kolombuto sekanjela ukuthi uyahambisana lento ngikhothana sekuhlanganiswe la leya bukwani khuluma ngalento lebasifundisa ngayo lenkhundleni nine vele uyabona silwane na hembe nishaye singisi nani keva nangu conversion conversion siyama conversion kufana ngenguquko noma ntshitho ususe automatic uye kumanyola lalela ke ulethi tinguquko letinhle hembe nawe silwane lalela nje inzuzo lalela inzuzo bathi sekuke umuntu longeka khona kuba ingcenye yale nguquko sibani lokho ukuthi noma formal sector no informal sector lokho ukuthi nathi thina sisebenza la emakhaya sona pensionable sonke but khona imali etafuna ithingete la lalela kude imali letha ungeteka yesilwane leyobo uvele umcashi akufakela yona nawe uyifaka good lana ku upgrade kuyamarinedwa lana silwane uyangifaka ukuthi ngithini shona gogo ufuna ukutshela mina wena ukuthi inyalo provident fund sitaba ngilo pension fund sitaba betlo provident ngisho lokho nje nani bakhuluma ngeminyaka lapha ukuthi lona 45 kuyela yena ayimfaki lendzaba bathi kusuka nje ku45 kuya le utawuchubeka wena nale provident fund kodwa ke kuyendansi ku45 senithola le ngusole sesengena kulese nivele nebuyiswa ngala nithi walila kule nguquko lo sethola siba pensionable so masifika eminyaka nokupension sesiyakhona kuvele first level yinhle kakhulu lento lena esibane yinhle ngoba asichazeli le bangulela kuhle gogo yebo
Eswatini TV has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Eswatini Communications Commission. We are committed to reporting news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that does not amount to hate speech or the description of gratuitous violence or explicit sex. For any complaints of our programming, please contact us on 2411-9600 or email info@eswatinitv.co.sz. You can also contact the Eswatini Communications Commission on 2406-7000 or write a letter to ECCOM on PO Box 7811 Mbabane. Email address is info@ecom.org.sz.
Kude lesinye isikhathi ngaphandle kwalesi
aba research bafunze
being risky means ukuthi nalokuwa kwayo kulula
nathi kufuna senze ukukhicita lokusendile
Right. Welcome back, and thank you for staying with us. It is still Kusile Breakfast Show, the Monday edition, and it feels almost proverbial that today is the 1st of September, because it was in September 2024 that we first sat down with Minister Savannah Mazia. And let's be honest, each conversation since has carried a headline of its own. In September 2024, it was the UAE partnership, it was artificial intelligence as well as STEM, an ambitious sketch of Eswatini's digital future, if you like. But then January 2025, it was the Google partnership. We signaled the Eswatini's digital ambitions that were no longer just regional but global. And then May 21st this year, we saw the Government in Your Hand initiative, which was launched, taking government services out of the queue and putting them in the citizens' pocket. Now, today, September 2025, 3 months on from May, the app is being updated, services are being expanded, and at the Eswatini International Trade Fest Pavilion number 5, there is an ICT hub. The vision that is on full display: app developments, digital infrastructure, cybersecurity, tech innovation, as well as digital literacy. And then here, of course, we have heard that there's agencies that are rallying this partnership, from the World Bank to the UAE, showcasing the fundamentals of transformation, including a coding training school. But alongside all these milestones will always be more questions. And yes, we certainly have some more for Minister Savannah, who is here in studio this morning with me. Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Good morning and happy spring day.
Yeah, indeed. Look, sometimes I laud the job of a minister, because I was just thinking yesterday that every time you hit a milestone, it seems as though there isn't time for celebrations, because there's something else in the pipeline. You are in a public service delivery kind of office. The public is always looking for something. And I wonder how we are able to balance all those things, just to always be on, gear mode. Let's shift to the next gear. How do you do that?
Well, you have to, right? There's a lot to achieve, a lot to be done. So I think that's just part of the job. You have to be able to move from the one thing to the next thing, and you can't sit down and really savor some of the successes. You just have to keep moving, because the country needs so much and people need so much, and so you have to keep going. Yeah.
It's interesting, because I feel like if there's one ministry that has maintained that kind of momentum and hasn't fizzled, it is the ICT ministry, because as I premise this conversation, I'm literally counting all the things that we've spoken about in theory, and then we've seen them come into undertaking. And as we speak about that now, we want to speak about Government in Your Hand.
Yeah.
That has taken center stage at the Trade Fair Pavilion number 5, the ICT hub. Let's talk about that. What is happening there?
Gosh, I want everyone to come to the pavilion.
Right.
We're doing some amazing things this year. You're right, AI is really the lead. It's the center stage for our trade fair pavilion this year. Robotics. We're going to have a museum as well that's filled by AI of our history. We're going to be looking at things like, what is cybersecurity actually in practicality?
Right.
So people really understand it, because I think sometimes it's a bit of a nebulous issue. People don't really understand what it's about. So there's going to be a lot of exciting things. We also have classes where we're going to be able to have anybody attend for free, and we can be able to help people code. People have AI classes, cybersecurity classes, as well as a variety of other tech classes. So it's very exciting. We're also going to see the expertise of our local people, our local young people in app applications, and the ones that we've actually also put in Government in Your Hand. So it's going to be, a very exciting time for young people and everybody to see what we do with ICT, to see what we can get to, and to see the developments we've done in just a year.
Absolutely, and shout out to our production team, because we can see the visuals. I think they took some time. I didn't even know that they took time to go there and have these visuals for us to appreciate what people can see when they get there.
Yeah.
But I know that you are big on convenience, and I suppose that was the crux of your anecdotal experience with Government in Your Hand.
Correct.
It's not necessarily the download, so to speak. Yes, that can be a measure of something, but the time saved, the money that is saved, and the problem that is solved at the end of the day. What is the one indicator that you look forward to know that indeed this is working, this Government in Your Hand?
Uptake is one.
Right.
Right, but the experience is more.
Absolutely.
Right, I'd love to be able to see more people experience the solution, experience the convenience, and understand the impact it has in their lives.
Yeah.
so that they can become the marketers of this particular experience. Because really, in the end, we'd like to be able to have more people uptake, but the experience is more important.
100%.
Yeah.
I want us to talk about the youth participation, because something really interesting happened when you shared your anecdotal experience that, you really felt like old people are being stripped of their dignity when they're queuing in the lines. But something about the youth, and President Boko from Botswana said something really interesting. When he assumed office, he said, we realized that we saw a very minimal youth participation on the polls. But we also realized that perhaps that was a vote of no confidence from the youth, because they don't want to go to the polls. They want to vote from the tip of their fingertips, from their phones. How much of this do you believe is going to give the youth the momentum, as well as the vitality, as well as the agility that they have to say, we are this generation?
Right. Correct. So he, he's right. We can't, as Africans, say that, especially in Eswatini, we have a youth component of 70%,
right,
and not participate, and not let them participate, and not let them be able to be curators of their own future. So that's a really important thing that we must always, adopt. I always get frustrated sometimes. I feel that people my age like to always harken back and say, in my day. Well, it's not your day, actually. It's somebody else's day. You had yours. And so please let others be able to participate. So for me, from day one, I think when we first met and even other interviews, I've always said, if we've got 70% of the population being 35 and younger, then let's focus on them having a greater future. It's not at the exclusion of others. I focus on women as well. It's not at the exclusion of others. It's just ensuring that what we do is future-proofing the country. Right. 100%. So if we're going to do that, then let's ensure that the youth are part of that proposition.
It's almost, unbelievable to even fathom the demographic dividend of Eswatini. You speak of 70% being 35 and younger, but it's almost the whole of Africa as well. We are a very young continent. But I want to ask this question, beyond the trade fair, what are we really looking at? The ICT Hub showcase, of course, is there. The people at home will still ask what happens when the lights go off after the trade fair. And obviously, we've been following the Udacity program. Just yesterday, I think I bumped into another post that you had an engagement with the people from India. And again, new commitments have been made. So I suppose there's answers to this question. What happens when the lights go off at the ICT?
I look at the trade fair as the place you go to look at the dreams, to look at the future and what's potentially possible for you.
Right.
And that's practical. Right, so we look at it as something that people can actually see, because sometimes, when I first came into this job and I was talking about the things we want to do, I would meet people saying that's never going to happen in Eswatini. People will never allow you to make that happen. And look at where we are a year later. A lot has happened. So when you go to the trade fair, we wanted for you to see the practicality, what's up there in the world. What are people really doing? So that when you are now being part of the capacity building, you've now seen what can be done. And now when you go into the classes, whatever we're giving you, the free classes, you're able to understand what you can achieve yourself. So beyond the trade fair for us is just showing you the practicality of the dream. Because, young people have to dream. They've got to be able to see what the future looks like and what's possible. So we're giving them that at the trade fair. So we're very, very comfortable in knowing that what they'll see there is what we're going to give them as far as capacity building is concerned. Yeah,
it's quite interesting. You mentioned that there was a bit of angst with you articulating your aspirations and your ambitions, but we've come to realize that that has become quite the reality, because we are sort of suffering the sins of other people, so to speak. It has been said with patriarchy, women are suffering the sins of patriarchy of our fathers. But us failing with the leadership apparatus, so to speak, before, shouldn't inform how we go ahead as we go forward. And I love the fact that you do say that you just want to prove them otherwise through the job, through the work.
Well, I love people who underestimate me.
Right.
I've been a woman all my life, I've been black all my life, and I've been an African all my life. So in every point of life, I've always been underestimated, which is great, because you can work in the shadows and make things happen. So now we're showing that actually the things we said we would do. Because the most important thing you can be with as a human being is to be impeccable with your word. When you can deliver it, do so. If you can't, tell them why, and tell them when you can. So that's what we're doing.
And as we speak about that, and I want to coin it the trust contract. When you build that contract, that trust contract with people, one of the many questions that have we've seen culminate is the question around the safety of data. And I remember that became prevalent when there was the Google partnership. And I think I saw you assuring the nation that, we shouldn't worry. If anything, this is Google. This should be the least people we're worried about. I want you to speak to that because there are still questions around that.
I mean, listen, I think I can understand sometimes when people sometimes don't trust government. I think sometimes governments do say things they're not going to do. But I think this government is saying a lot that it is doing. And so what we're trying to prove is that when we say something, we do it, number one. And that's important to have that trust dividend.
Right.
But I also think that it's unfortunate how the Google thing has been dealt with, because the whole reason of bringing these global hyperscalers is, first of all, because they were promised, if you remember when we met in Ngwenyama in Mandulo, we'll bring in these really global hyperscalers. So we said that and we've done that.
Right.
But we also bring them for a second reason, so that when our information is worked on and is secured by such hyperscalers who have so much to lose, then we have first grade, 7-star tightness on our information. So if you're going to do something, always try and do it with the best in the world, not the mediocre people, not the ones who are trying to get to it, the ones who really have the experience and as much to lose. And when you're going to do something, do it with someone as much to lose as you have. And so that's why we go with the hyperscalers. And we'll bring in more hyperscalers, by the way. Google is just the first of many that we're going to bring in. Yes.
I mean, of course, you've even brought in the UAE.
Yes.
And I suppose they are, rallying partners at the trade fair now. And perhaps let's speak to that partnership, because that is an ongoing partnership. We've seen your trips there, some of which people started asking, what is she doing there? What is she doing there? And then it culminated to something that they were like, okay, we understand now.
Yes.
That is exactly what you're speaking to. I'll prove to them, and then they'll understand.
Yeah.
This partnership with the UAE, let's speak to that.
The partnership is very important. We as government sign a lot of MOUs with many countries, and I'm a lover of us doing that. But I also don't want to sign 1,000 MOUs and then you don't do anything.
Of course.
Because what you do with the country you're signing with is you minimize the trust and you minimize the relationship. So if you're going to sign an MOU, then activate it and make it beneficial for both parties. So we've signed an MOU with the UAE, and they're right. We were going there a lot because we also had to be able to sell ourselves as a country and sell out that we're really serious. Because just like other countries like the UAE are getting tired of signing MOUs, and then they say, well, we signed an MOU, and then we say another minister 5 years later, and another minister 5 years later.
Yeah.
What's the point? We had to be able to say, we're going to make it happen. And so we have. So we're very excited about that relationship, and we continue to want to be able to ensure that we are giving each other, both ourselves as Eswatini and them as the UAE, the benefit of this MOU.
I see your passion in education. Perhaps you don't go out there and say, I'm passionate about education, but you just do the thing. Let's talk about Udacity. 300,000 Eswatini sounds ambitious. And I understand why some people may not even fathom that. But when you speak about the timeline, it then makes sense, right? What is this Udacity coding program? And what is in it for Eswatini?
It's a foundational program that really introduces Eswatini to the world of technology.
Right.
That's so important for foundational building. Let me tell you something. Whether we care to understand it or not, we're going into that world. We're in that world already. So if we want to be able to be part of that world, it's almost the same thing as someone saying, I'm never going to use a cell phone. I don't know how it works. Well, guess what? We're now using cell phones. They're part of our lives. We can't imagine life without cell phones. A time is coming when we're not going to be able to imagine life without AI, without robotics, without all these things. So the world of coding is a baseline for everybody to be able to be a part of, so that when it comes, you're able to participate and use it.
Steve Jobs was recently, Bill Gates was recently asked in another interview about, AI and the people that are still reluctant to integrate with AI. And he said, you almost sounded stupid because this is like when there was the computer boom. And there were people who were saying, I'm not with this bandwagon of computers. Well, it is indispensable.
Yeah.
It is here now, and you'll be left out.
Correct.
And you will bear the brunt if you don't catch up.
Yeah. It's true.
Let's talk about the urban and rural divide. I think one thing that is mostly highlighted right now is that all Tinkhundla centers in Eswatini, have Wi-Fi, But there's more that can be done, of course, and that's exactly why I've said I can never wish to be a minister because you achieve this. There's something else that has to be done. The risk with digital rollouts is that Mbabane moves ahead, but Kusile stays behind. What's the plan to ensure that this is not a reality here?
The two things that are really of passion to me, or maybe three things. One is young people.
Mm-hmm.
Two is women. And thirdly is people from underserved areas, mostly the rural areas. So what you'll find, for example, is in our strategy as the ministry, there's a huge focus in being inclusive, especially people in the rural areas. So you'll find that, for example, we've been able to install microwaves throughout the country. You'll find that we are looking mainly at rural schools even when we're training teachers. So 75% of the people that we're training as teachers are coming from the rural areas. So that really is an area of importance for us to ensure that those in the rural areas and underserved areas have just the same opportunity. And that's why we have online training. And that's why we're trying to find out how we can be able to have Wi-Fi in Tingunda so that people can be able to go to those areas and then do the coding classes. And that's why we want to be able to ensure that we put in the microwave so that people have strong, reliable internet in those areas. And we're going to put in more. I mean, we're going to come in with satellites. There's a lot that we want to do so that the rural areas are not left behind, so that people have the same chance. Because you shouldn't be unable to access the future just because of geographic positioning.
Yeah.
That's just not fair.
And I want us to zoom in more on these lens of getting people out of the margins. Because too often, as people who are a little more privileged in towns, we feel like we are, you know, underserved ourselves, so to speak, but it's very relative. The people, Labasis Kusile, who are in Dubazi, in the Cicerone region, why is it so important, if we zoom in to that lens, that we all move as a unit as we progress and develop, and why that is beneficial economically as well?
Because it's only right and only fair, but also there's a Bill Gates somewhere there.
Right.
There's an Elon Musk somewhere there. There's an Oprah Winfrey somewhere there. So why starve ourselves as a country of an opportunity because people have different geography? If you don't access and give those people access, the country is starved of major opportunities. Don't think that only people in the cities dream big. Don't think that capacity and know-how only resides in the urban areas. It certainly does not. So I think it's only fair to ourselves as a country and to those individuals. It's not their fault that they're underserved, but certainly we should do whatever we can to open up opportunities for them.
I really love the outlook of why starve ourselves of this potential that is there.
It's not smart.
Yeah, instead of just looking at it that we are starving the person that has the potential,
we're starving the country.
We're starving the country, all of us.
Yeah.
That is profound. Let's talk about the partners that are in play. Of course, you have MTN, you have the World Bank, the UAE. All of these are heavyweights, if you like, but partnerships can cut both ways if you really look into it. What do they bring that government couldn't do alone?
Well, listen, it's no secret that as ICT, as the ministry, we've got a very, very small budget. I mean, when I first came in, I was very shocked that this is a budget for a ministry that's supposed to be leading us into the future. So these relationships then become even more important because they then expand to areas where we couldn't get to because of the financial limitations. So I talk about MTN, for example. We work with them in a variety of areas, but also they've got the academy. So we're able to work with them to get and see how people can access their academy. We also work with them to see how we can work together on the data issue, by the way. I mean, it's a continuous conversation, the issue of you know, the affordability of data. And they've been really understanding and participating in that. And then you look at areas like the UAE. You know, they've helped us train teachers. They've helped us to be able to come up with this coding platform. And so there are many things we're going to be able to do with them. Besides that, in fact, there's other things that we do with them that actually don't even make the press because we're looking at training the police. You know, we've trained a variety of other people in the cybersecurity space. And also we're going to work with them in the issue of legislation so that they can help us to be able to see how we can legislate in the AI robotics because we don't have currently that expertise in the country. So that's also an area we're going to work with them. And then, of course, you look at the Googles of the world who are the hyperscalers and working with us in cybersecurity, but also in adding more services in government in your hand. Because government in your hand, will have government services from different ministries, but also non-governmental services.
Right.
For example, one of the things we're looking at is analysis of weather. That's not really a government issue, but we do believe that our farmers need that information, right? And the issue of looking at attending schools, how do you attend schools, and looking at extracurricular. Those are not necessarily government, but we want to be able to add those into the mix. And livestock, tracking your livestock, a cow or whatever. That's not necessarily a government issue, but our people need that. So why don't we add that into the mix?
The biggest crisis in the Kingdom of Eswatini and certainly Africa is the unemployment crisis. It's a real one. It's a very thorny one. And when we drill into it, we see a low-hanging fruit with ICT, particularly coding. And I'm happy that you have programs that are speaking to that. Can you speak to the opportunities that will come in terms of employment creation and job creation? I suppose even remote jobs, because I think that is the one area that really allows that, this ICT space. When we have so many people learning about coding, what are some of the job or employment opportunities that can come for our youth that is so unemployed?
The jobs of today are changing.
Right.
That's something we cannot walk away from. So what do we do, again, to future-proof ourselves and ensure that we're able to access these jobs? We build capacity for the youth and anybody else who's interested. And that then means that the coding is the fundamental start, right? That will lead you into whether it's AI, robotics, or whatever it is you want to do, space travel, space training. That becomes the creation of the future, so that the young people are not only looking to government for jobs, but looking to be able to be the creators of jobs themselves, but also can work remotely. I mean, the program that we talked about, you and I, when I came here in September, that we're still working on, is the issue of remote work. But we can't get remote work when we don't have the skills base.
Yeah.
So part of that skills-based creation is to be able to fill into those gaps of the global remote work, but also even local
very
work.
competitive too,
yes,
that one.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I just came from India. Those guys are, are cooking with gasoline. I'm telling you, they're hard to trot. But also when we're looking to attract ICT investors into the country, they want the capacity. So this whole capacity building is an area that not only looks at people being able to create jobs, it looks at people being able to have remote work whilst it's doing Eswatini, but also to be able to fit into the investor profile that is required when investors come to town in the ICT space and in any other space, because ICT will be involved even in non-ICT environments.
I love the term you have used, future-proofing ourselves going forward. I wonder, though, how can we future-proof ourselves in a way that we allow the locals here to be able to create firms, to be able to create solutions, and we're not edged out by, foreign firms, in the future? Because as we start, of course, we will need private investment, that's for sure.
When I do my mentoring courses, I always tell people, when you are starting out, always know that you are competing with 8 billion people in a business. So when you're coming up with an app solution or anything else, understand that you're competing with those people. But also, on the flip side of that coin, you have that much of a market of 8 billion people. So when you look at a solution, don't just look at a solution that will only serve us as a Maswati. Of course, we're the primary source. And that's why, for example, at RSTP, we are continuously looking for young people to come and show us their developments. I'm always searching out for people to be able to add that on. But look at yourself and say, I'm doing this coding because I'm going to come up with a solution that will be a solution for 8 billion people in the world, and potentially 10 billion people as time goes by. So that's what I look at and say, don't only look at the fact that you're competing with them. Compete with them so that you're the best, but also know that they're also your market.
I'm being notified through my earcom that we have run out of time, but I do want to ask you in 100 days, and by the way, 100 days is December.
Okay.
So we'll be wrapping up the year of 2025. If we sit here again in December 2025, what's the one milestone you will want citizens to judge you on?
Oh my God, there are many milestones. First of all, there's the milestone of policy. We're going to have the critical infrastructure bill that's going to go through Parliament, as well as the cybersecurity regulations. So that's really one milestone. And in the capacity building, it's the coders, as well as the relationship we've just forged with India, which is why I went to India. I don't like to go to countries unless I know that we can be able to have an impactful relationship.
Right.
So that's also very important. On the issue of getting government in your hand, there'll be more products on there, and we'll also be looking at adding more products in other areas. And so I think there's a lot that we can be grateful for, and I think when I'm judged in 100 days, that'd be one of the things that I think we should be judged on. But most importantly, to ensure that we're working on closing other areas that we can't discuss right now because we're just working on them. So in those 100 days, a lot more will have happened.
You can whisper those ones. Perhaps
yes, just between you and I, not the whole country.
Okay, fantastic. And I'll be sure to tell my viewers.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly
Thanks so much for your time, and all the best with these promises that you're giving us. If there's one thing I can tell you is that I'm confident. There's no consternation on my end because you've delivered on everything else that we've had a conversation on. But now you're promising us policy, coding, India, new developments within government in your hands. So in 100 days, that's a big challenge.
Exactly right, yes.
All the best. Minister Savannah, your ICT minister. Let's go for a net break. Thank you for staying with us.
Eswatini TV has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Eswatini Communications Commission. We are committed to reporting news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that does not amount to hate speech or the description of gratuitous violence or explicit sex. For any complaints of our programming, please contact us on 2411-9600 or email info@eswatinitv.co.za. You can also contact the Eswatini Communications Commission on 2406-7000 or write a letter to ECCOM on PO Box 7811 Mbabane. Email address is info@ecom.org.sz.
When you choose your adventures, you do so with an open heart and a desire for the unexpected. You embark on journeys to discover new worlds full of wonder. You choose a path to awaken your senses, a world to make you look up and realize just how inspiring this life can be. Arrive and awaken your heart. Explore life in ways only thought possible in your dreams. Discover just how far you go to expand your understanding of life's greatest mysteries. There's just one place on this planet with so much to offer. Now is the time for you to have the royal experience.
Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. Let's look at international news now. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has condemned the horrific murder of Andrei Parubi, a leading figure in Ukraine's 2014 pro-European Maidan protest movement, who was shot and killed in Lviv on Saturday. A former Speaker of Parliament, Parubi, 54, also previously served as Secretary of the National Security and Defense Council.
He was the former Speaker of the Ukrainian Parliament. Andrei Parubi was one of Moscow's most vocal critics. Saturday, the pro-Western politician was shot dead in Lviv, in western Ukraine. His killer has yet to be found.
Law enforcement agencies, the Minister of Internal Affairs and the Prosecutor General are reporting regularly. They are investigating the circumstances surrounding the murder of Andrei Parubi. A lot of resources are being used, all that are necessary. Unfortunately, the crime was carefully planned, but everything is being done to solve this crime.
Parubi had been active in Ukrainian politics since 1990, when he participated in protests demanding independence from the Soviet Union. He was also active in the 2004 Orange Revolution and a leader of the 2014 Maidan Revolution, in which Ukrainians pushed for closer ties with Europe. Widely known for his advocacy for the Ukrainian language and culture, He held his seat in parliament from 2007 until his death. As investigations continue, former Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko shared a tribute to his former colleague and friend, calling his death a shot in the heart of Ukraine.
Well, the Ukrainian military reported overnight strikes on Russian oil refineries in Krasnodar and Syrian, with Kyiv recording multiple explosions and a fire at the Krasnodar facility, which produces 3 million tons of light petroleum products each year.
In the early hours of the morning, residents in Zaporizhia looked on in silence, taking in the scale of what happened overnight. Once again, this city in southeastern Ukraine was the target of deadly Russian strikes. More than 10 buildings hit, windows blown out. Officials say a combination of missiles and drones ripped through the area, cutting power for 25,000 residents.
We were in the entrance hall when we heard the explosions. The whole building was covered in dust and filled with smoke. It was very frightening.
People were calling for help from their windows. They were suffocating. The building was on fire. You're never prepared for something like that, you know.
Further north in the Dnipro region, the same story. Missiles and drones hit homes and buildings. And in the capital, it was another long night underground. Kyiv's residents once more forced into basements and metro stations, taking shelter as Russian attacks rained down, just 48 hours after a deadly wave of bombings killed at least 25 people. President Volodymyr Zelensky says 14 regions across Ukraine were targeted overnight. Air Defense says it managed to shoot down most of the 600 drones and 45 missiles fired by Russia. This as any hopes of renewed peace talks between the two countries drift further out of reach.
Well, nearly 500,000 people have been displaced in eastern Pakistan after days of torrential rain caused by rivers to overflow, rescue officials said, as large-scale operations continue amid a devastating monsoon season. The Punjab Disaster Management Authority reported Saturday that since June 26, the monsoon has claimed 835 lives nationwide, and this includes 195 in Punjab province.
They've faced days of rain, flooding, evacuating more people than any other time in Punjab's history, 500,000 residents. And now authorities have a new emergency.
What we're most worried about are 2 points. One is called Tremel, where a bunch of rivers come together, about 2 or 3. And then Panjnath, where all 5 rivers come together.
Because at least 3 major rivers in the province have burst their banks, and it's still raining. Rescuers tried to convince people to leave their homes this Saturday.
We're trying to save you from the floods, save your loved ones and prevent loss of life.
But not everyone listens. Some residents chose to remain behind.
Water entered my home suddenly. We had no idea. We were in the house when suddenly there were announcements made to leave. But where would I go after leaving my house? I live in a rented home already, so I decided to stay. All of my neighbours left.
In order to alleviate the water's pressure, in some cases, various dams have to be taken down. In a province where about 120 million people live.
Britain, France and Germany said they are offered to extend the Iran nuclear deal and delay sanctions for 30 days remains on the table. And this was said by UK Ambassador Barbara Woodward at the UN Friday. The 3 nations triggered on Thursday the snapback mechanism to restore UN sanctions on Tehran for violating its 2015 nuclear commitments.
Rarely used but powerful diplomatic tool, the snapback mechanism. An emergency break that reinstates UN sanctions against Iran within 30 days if Tehran violates its nuclear commitments. France, Germany, and Britain, known as the E3, triggered their procedure on Thursday with the UN Security Council. They insist they're open to a diplomatic solution.
Our notification to the Security Council has now triggered a 30-day period. It does not mark the end of diplomacy. Our extension offer remains on the table.
The European powers have serious concerns about Iran's nuclear ambitions. They have demanded 3 conditions for Tehran to avoid the sanctions: restored access for UN nuclear inspectors, transparency about its stocks of enriched uranium, and engagement by Iran in talks with the United States. Tehran says the E3 move is a political attack.
Iran categorically rejects and condemns the unlawful notification by France, Germany, and the United Kingdom. This action sidesteps the JCPOA dispute resolution mechanism. This is a flawed political attempt against Iran.
Russia and China have accused the E3 of escalating the situation, despite Iranian cooperation. They have submitted a draft resolution to the UN Security Council that would push back the sanctions 6 months. On Wednesday, Tehran had welcomed back International Atomic Energy Agency inspectors for the first time since the US and Israeli strikes on their nuclear facilities in June.
Tensions between the United States and Venezuela are escalating as a significant U.S. naval buildup unfolds in the southern Caribbean and surrounding waters, which American officials say is intended to counter threats from Latin American drug cartels. Now, President Donald Trump has made targeting these cartels a central priority of his administration, framing it as part of a broader strategy to curb migration as well as to strengthen security along the U.S. southern border.
Volunteers as old as 75 turned up to enlist, even those with trouble hearing. That shows the level of some Venezuelans' enthusiasm to join the militia in response to an American military buildup off the country's shores.
We have to take any enemy seriously. We cannot dismiss any threat they may come up with.
We have to defend the homeland. Despite my age, I'm ready, because we can serve in many ways.
The United States is reinforcing its deployment of warships in the southern Caribbean. A number of guided missile destroyers have been sighted there, and the AP news agency reports that 3 amphibious assault ships with more than 4,000 personnel could be joining them next week. The US says it's using the force to crack down on drug smuggling cartels. Washington accuses Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro of running one such gang, and Maduro is stoking speculation that they will invade, though the US has not officially threatened to do so. Amid the tension, and in their own attempt to tackle the cartels, Venezuela and Colombia have sent tens of thousands of troops to their shared border.
I've spoken to the army. They told me it's to protect the Colombian side, in case there is any dispute in Venezuela.
Venezuelan President Maduro claims to be activating 4.5 million militia volunteers, a number widely considered an exaggeration.
The United States on August 29 ended tariff exemptions on small packages entering the country from abroad. This was a move that has sparked concern among small businesses and warnings of consumer price hikes.
Yunuet and her 2 children traveled for hours to come to the post office in Mexico City. But after the National Post Service suspended shipments to the US, they're leaving disappointed.
My loved ones were expecting some presents. I wanted to set them things like a little shawl, something made in Mexico. Now I can't. I've already bought it, but I can't get it to them.
The postal services of dozens of countries have done the same. French, Danish, Spanish, Russian, Indian, British, Taiwanese, Belgian, German and Italian, to name a few. But why now? On Friday, the United States ended duty-free imports for all parcels worth less than $800, an exemption known as de minimis. President Donald Trump's administration promises the move will be permanent, and postal services hope the resulting logistics headaches are temporary.
We're aiming to establish a customs duty payment process, ideally within a month or 2, in order to promptly resume express mail service to the U.S.
One certainty is there'll be more paperwork for sellers and higher prices for buyers. The US government already eliminated the exemption for goods from China at the start of May and says it's collected almost $500 million from the new tax since then. The idea behind the expanded policy is to tackle low-cost, direct-to-consumer imports and boost American manufacturing and retail.
A United States appeals court found President Donald Trump exceeded his powers by invoking emergency authority to levy sweeping global tariffs, deeming most of them illegal, but letting them stand until mid-October. Trump announced he would challenge the ruling at the Supreme Court.
Donald Trump's sweeping tariffs are still in effect, as tweeted by the president, but for how long? A first specialized trade court had ruled that the tariff hikes were illegal. On Friday, a federal appeals court, which the government turned to, largely upheld that first ruling. It said the U.S. president had no legal right to impose tariffs the way he did, using an emergency powers law, leading him to act alone and fast, imposing tariffs on almost every country.
The statute bestows significant authority on the president to undertake a number of actions in response to a declared national emergency, but none of these actions explicitly include the power to impose tariffs.
The Constitution grants Congress the power to impose taxes and tariffs. Presidents have ways to impose import taxes, but with certain limits. Donald Trump wrote that the court was, quote, highly partisan, and that, if allowed to stand, this decision would literally destroy the United States of America. Attorney General Pam Bondi said the administration will appeal the decision. When imposing tariffs, Donald Trump invoked the 1977 International Emergency Economic Powers Act, declaring the illegal flow of drugs and immigrants to the U.S. as a first emergency, leading to tariffs targeting Mexico, Canada, and China. Another national emergency invoked by Trump was the trade deficit with several countries. The new tariffs have allowed the U.S. to pressure the European Union, Japan, and others into new trade deals, and they have brought twice as much revenue as the previous year.
CDC Director Susan Monarez was fired on August 27 after resisting changes to vaccine policy that were advanced by Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and that she believed contradicted scientific evidence, a close associate said on August 28.
Of the genomics era.
She was nominated by Donald Trump himself, but after less than a month on the job, the White House says that Susan Monarez has been fired as head of the CDC. In a statement, the administration explained that Monarez was not aligned with the president's agenda of making America healthy again. The nation's top health official, Robert F. Kennedy, would only say this about the firing during an appearance on Fox News.
But the agency is in trouble, and we need to fix it, and we are fixing it, and it may be that some people should not be working there anymore.
So if I'm confirmed as a CDC director...
Monarez, who testified before the Senate in June, says she was pressured by Kennedy, a vaccine skeptic, to change the agency's vaccine policy. She initially refused to step down, and through her lawyers, she accused Kennedy of weaponizing public health for political gain and putting millions of American lives at risk.
When CDC Director Susan Monarez refused to rubber stamp unscientific, reckless directives and fire dedicated health experts, she chose protecting the public over serving a political agenda. For that reason, she has been targeted.
As the nation's top health official, Kennedy has effectively done away with an advisory committee that recommends vaccines and revived a task force to scrutinize childhood vaccines, prompting concern from most health experts. In response to Monarez's firing, several other top officials at the CDC resigned, including the agency's chief medical officer. And all of this follows months of turmoil at the CDC. Its budget has been slashed, hundreds of employees terminated, and the agency is still reeling after a gunman fired hundreds of rounds at the CDC headquarters in Atlanta earlier this month, apparently upset about the effects he claims to have suffered as a result of a COVID vaccine.
Thailand's Constitutional Court dismissed Prime Minister Paetongtarn Shinawatra on August 29 for an ethics violation. This is in another crushing blow to the Shinawatra political dynasty that triggered a flurry of deal-making aimed at filling the devoid.
Suspended in July, Thailand's now former Prime Minister Paetongtarn Shinawatra arrived in court on Friday hoping to convince the judges not to sack her, but they decided otherwise. A year after her predecessor, the Prime Minister was removed from office along with the rest of her cabinet.
In performing her duty as the Prime Minister, the accused should exercise good judgment in choosing ways that do not violate the Constitution.
The situation turned sour in June for Paetongtarn Shinawatra, the daughter of former Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra. Hoping to resolve tensions with neighboring Cambodia, she talked with the country's former leader, Hun Sen. She referred to him as uncle, was deferential, and criticized the Thai military commander. When Hun Sen leaked the recording, people were left fuming. A group of lawmakers took the case to the Constitutional Court. The Prime Minister said that her conversation was a negotiation technique to avert border clashes and save lives.
I accept the Constitutional Court's verdict. However, I would like to insist on my pure intention and determination to serve the country. The phone conversation that was leaked, I did not ask for anything for my personal interest.
Thai politics have been divided for 2 decades between the Shinawatra clan and royalist conservatives. Paetongtarn Shinawatra's removal could now throw Thailand politics into turmoil, with no obvious successor in sight.
The United Nations Security Council voted unanimously on August 28 to terminate the UN peacekeeping force in southern Lebanon at the end of next year after nearly 5 decades. They are bowing to demands from the United States and its close ally, Israel.
A key decision at the UN on Thursday. Its peacekeepers in Lebanon will begin a year-long withdrawal in 2026. The Security Council unanimously approved a final extension of UNIFIL, the interim force in Lebanon. Israel quickly welcomed the vote.
Today we can declare that UNIFIL is concluding its mandate on the border between Israel and Lebanon. We are at a decisive moment for Lebanon, Israel, and the region on what comes next.
UNIFIL has patrolled southern Lebanon since 1978. Some 10,800 peacekeepers monitor Israel's withdrawal and help the Lebanese government reclaim control over areas once dominated by Hezbollah. France had initially pushed for a 1-year extension to the peacekeeping force without committing to a final end. But the US, Israel's key ally, threatened a veto. Lebanon, for its part, welcomed the extension, but at the same time warned of the risks of ending the mission.
Lebanon still considers UNIFIL's presence as essential to guarantee security and stability in Lebanon and the region, until we reach a comprehensive political understanding on all pending issues.
Lebanon's concerns were echoed by the UK, which said a premature withdrawal would risk fostering a security environment that Hezbollah can exploit.
The German and the French government were scheduled to hold a joint cabinet meeting in Brégançon and Toulon on August 28 and 29.
Embraces and bouquets of flowers on the steps of Fort de Brégançon. In a rare move, the Macrons welcomed Friedrich Merz to their summer residence. The two seek to revive the Franco-German partnership after Olaf Scholz's lackluster term in office.
I believe that the Franco-German partnership is now perfectly aligned to create a stronger Europe in economic, commercial and monetary terms, but also to ensure that Europe maintains its geopolitical position in the conflict in Ukraine.
As German Chancellor, I attach great importance to French-German friendship. It is a cornerstone, a foundation of Europe.
On Friday, the two men will bring together 10 ministers from each country for a joint cabinet meeting. A 25-year-old ritual, but one that's been overshadowed by the instability of the French executive. The possible fall of the Beirut government in a confidence vote on the 8th of September is likely to prevent any concrete announcements. But beyond internal problems, there are real tensions between Paris and Berlin. The main point of contention is the SCAF military aircraft project, led by the two capitals with the support of Spain. Disagreements persist between France's Dassault and Europe's Airbus. On Wednesday, Merz postponed the decision on the future of the project.
I have agreed with President Macron that we will make a joint decision during the last quarter of the year, that is at the end of 2025.
On the French side, the euphoria of Chancellor Merz's first weeks in office has subsided. Questions remain about the strategic direction of the Conservative politician, who was initially a supporter of a strong European Union but now seems more concerned with protecting his relationship with the United States.
On Friday, Palestinian factions in several Beirut refugee camps handed over their weapons to the Lebanese army, an official confirmed as part of the government's push to disarm non-state groups. Now, the army has completed the collection of arms in a camp near Beirut, signaling the start of efforts to place all weapons under state control. France 24 correspondents Rawa Taha and Kala Samaha reported from Lebanon.
The Lebanese army finalized the process of receiving weapons from inside the Palestinian camp of Burj al-Barajni in Beirut. Various kinds of arms, rockets, shells and ammunition were all placed under its custody. Fatah made the decisive choice to implement the agreement reached last May between the Lebanese and Palestinian presidents.
These weapons, which have long been a burden on our camps and at one stage placed them under strict security scrutiny, are now being deposited as a trust-building measure. It's a step to reopen a serious Palestinian-Lebanese dialogue that would lead to the recognition of civil and social rights for Palestinians in Lebanon.
Hamas, however, believes the timing is not yet suitable for disarmament, demanding guarantees out of fear that past experiences might be repeated.
This issue is not only about security and weapons. It is about human, civil, and social rights. It is not a trade-off. Must be matched with positive measures addressing the rights of the Palestinian people.
The Palestinian street is also divided. Some demand a dignified life, while others fear sudden security incidents.
It's not in our interest as Palestinians to possess illegal or uncontrolled weapons that affect our lives and those of the Lebanese people as a whole.
Conferences and meetings must be organized to resolve this issue and to ensure that they grant us all right as Palestinians so that we can live in dignity.
We're not against handing over our weapons. We're in favor of handing them over with a guarantee the people will be protected. Last time we handed them over, they committed a massacre against us.
The handover of weapons inside the Palestinian camps marks a first step in the government's plan to impose its security authority and confine all arms to the Lebanese state.
20 years after Hurricane Katrina crashed into the Gulf Coast, New Orleans is set to commemorate the anniversary on August 29 with memorials, performances, and a parade to honor those who were affected.
Waving flags for help. Gosh.
The scenes, broadcast around the world, quickly became iconic. Submerged city streets, desperate people on rooftops,
We are seeing scenes like this.
the chaos at the Superdome shelter, and the heart-wrenching sound bites. Hurricane Katrina clattered into Louisiana on the 29th of August 2005, with winds nearing 200 kilometers an hour. Damage was widespread across several states, but nowhere was like New Orleans. The system of dikes and canals failed, flooding more than 4/5 of the city. There was uproar over the authorities' handling of the disaster. Evacuation orders were too little, too late, and residents were left to fend for themselves.
Looks very ill, holding her stomach.
President George W. Bush initially threw his weight behind the Federal Emergency Agency and its head, Michael Brown.
Brownie, you're doing a heck of a job. The FEMA director's working 24
before later accepting responsibility.
We will do what it takes
We will stay as long as it takes to help citizens rebuild their communities and their lives.
Hurricane Katrina exposed the depth of inequality in the United States. Poor black communities were hardest hit by the disaster, which displaced 1.5 million people, many of them permanently.
In Iraq, people have been struggling to cope with one of the worst droughts on record. Water levels in the vital Tigris River have dropped significantly, and parts of the country are facing a severe water crisis. Yet, the dry conditions have proved to be a boon for one sector. Archaeology excavation teams have been able to unearth ancient ruins that were once submerged.
A drought that's bringing long-buried history back to the surface. On the banks of Iraq's Mosul Reservoir, receding water has revealed previously lost ancient tombs. Fragment by fragment, archaeologists meticulously piece the remains back together before they're sent to a regional museum for further study and preservation.
As the water level drops, we expect to find other archaeological sites. This work that we're doing now is very difficult, complex, and it takes time.
These tombs are about 2,300 years old, dating back to the era when this land was under Greek rule. The archaeologists' aim is to unearth as many as possible before the area is once again submerged.
In 2023, about 4 or 5 tombs were discovered, but this time we have discovered about 40 tombs that are currently visible, which we have excavated.
While archaeologists are grateful for this new access, the low water line is evidence of the effects of climate change, which Iraq is feeling particularly harshly. 2025 has been the country's driest year in almost a century. The Ministry of Water Resources has warned water reserves are at only 8% of capacity, a shortage that's also partly attributed to dams constructed by Turkey and Iran upstream on the Tigris and Euphrates, rivers that have been the lifeblood of Iraq for centuries.
Mount Fuji hasn't erupted since 1707, but for Volcanic Disaster Preparedness Day, Japanese officials have released computer and AI-generated videos showing a simulation of a potential violent eruption of the active volcano.
This is an AI-generated disaster simulation video made by the Tokyo Metropolitan Government. It's to warn that if Mount Fuji, 100 kilometers away, erupted, there would be transport chaos, food and power supply disruption, and respiratory problems in Tokyo. 2 people in the Japanese capital watching the video took it in their stride.
Nature's power is so great that maybe it's better if it scares us a little bit. It's not like people around me are panicking.
Unless there's hard data, like there's actually some volcanic activity or earthquakes happening a lot, then I would pay attention to what's happening there.
The Tokyo Metropolitan Government says that, indeed, there are currently no signs of Fuji erupting. The last eruption was in 1707. The message now is to say, in a worst-case scenario, that ash could reach the capital in 1 to 2 hours.
Rather than focusing on a Mount Fuji eruption itself, the video mainly depicts what the situation would be like in the event of widespread volcanic ash fallout. I believe, regardless of where an eruption occurs, the general conditions would be similar. I think the video draws from past cases of ash-related disaster situations as reference, and in that sense, I don't think there's anything strange about it.
Release of the video now is part and parcel of Japan's meticulous disaster planning, which involves dealing with the threat of earthquakes, typhoons, floods, and mudslides. The country is on what's called the Ring of Fire, around the edges of the Pacific Ocean, known for volcanic eruptions and frequent quakes.
All right, this marks the end of our international news. We'll go for a net break. We have an interview for you after the break.
Wow, what a house. Maybe a little much for me though. Okay, this is probably more like what I can afford. Unless I could borrow the money to get something a little bigger. Perfect. But borrowing means that I could be in debt. And for a lot of people, that can be intimidating. But debt is really just a way of borrowing money with the promise of paying it back with interest. That sounds okay, right? Unless I would take out a big loan that I couldn't pay back. People take out loans all the time to buy houses, cars, to pay for school, all sorts of things. And it's not just people. Companies also borrow, and governments do it too. When a government borrows, it's called public debt or sovereign debt. Governments raise this money by issuing bonds and then selling them to the public with a guarantee that they'll pay them back. Just like people, countries need money to buy or build stuff that their income, mostly tax revenues, won't entirely pay for. Governments should invest their money wisely in things that help their citizens. Think of education or healthcare. Governments can also invest in things that will generate revenue or grow the economy, like infrastructure projects. Governments can also use the money to reduce taxes, or they can give it directly to its citizens who need the support. So, why are economists sometimes concerned by public debt? Well, for all the benefits that these funds can bring, there are also risks. Let's take two countries to demonstrate. Here's country A, and here's country B. Now, let's say both of them have borrowed roughly the same amount of money at roughly the same time. But looking closer, we can see they have very different economies, notably in size, measured by their gross domestic product, or GDP. Let's look at their debt levels again, but this time as a percentage of their GDP. And wow, you see the difference? Same debt, but very different outcomes. Countries are able to manage their debt when they borrow a reasonable amount relative to their ability to pay it. Country A's economy is big enough to pay the interest on the debt. If country B cannot pay things back, well, it gets harder to convince investors to lend you more money. And that is scary because it only gets harder from there. If an economic crisis hits, one of these guys will have the funds they need to respond. The other is going to need some help. The trick here is for governments, like country B, to invest the money they borrow wisely, which can help keep debt manageable. So, where does that leave me in my new house? Well, first, I need to adjust my own budget. I don't need that. You're gone. Definitely gone. And second, debt isn't about living beyond my means. It's about borrowing a reasonable amount relative to my ability to pay it, even if I do splurge every now and again.
Tuberculosis is in the news, but not for the right reasons. A severe resource shortage is threatening the global response to end TB, and the disease is appearing in places where people had forgotten that it existed. Is the world on the brink of a global TB crisis? We are talking about a millennia-old disease that the world has not been able to end. In fact, in the 5 minutes that you will watch this Science in 5, 11 people would have died of tuberculosis. Our expert today is Dr. Teresa Kaseyeva. Welcome, Teresa. Teresa, I heard something that I was also not aware of, and it surprised me that a quarter of the world's population could be infected with TB and not even know it. Could you explain that? How concerned should we be?
You are absolutely right, Vismita. The world doesn't seem to recognize how widespread TB bacteria is. An estimated 1 in 4 people globally have been infected with TB bacteria, and yet not many of them realize their risks. While only 5 to 10% of people infected with TB will develop active disease, that's more than 10 million people falling ill every year.
So, Teresa, TB is a highly infectious disease, right? It's airborne, it spreads through air. Is there a cure? What's the treatment? And how do we diagnose it?
TB is in fact curable disease, but it requires completion of treatment. It would take several months, from 4 to 6 months of treatment with a combination of antibiotics. And even the most challenging, difficult forms of drug resistance, type tuberculosis, could be successfully treated. We have much better options available now. We have shorter, fully oral, injections-free, and more effective treatment now available. While tuberculosis affects primarily lungs, it could affect also other parts of our body, bones and joints, skin, kidneys, and even brain. Tuberculosis could be successfully treated, but the essential condition is early detection using rapid molecular diagnostic tests, including for the detection of drug-resistant tuberculosis.
Teresa, how can we protect ourselves and our loved ones from TB?
Protecting ourselves and our loved ones starts with awareness, early detection, and treatment. Consult your physician if you see symptoms like prolonged coughing, fever, weight loss, especially if you've been in contact with someone diagnosed with tuberculosis recently. This is especially important if you are belonging to one of so-called risk groups, like children, people with immunocompromised systems, people with HIV/AIDS and diabetes, and undernourished.
So, is the world really on the brink of a TB crisis?
In short, yes. Tuberculosis is the world's deadliest infectious disease. Remember, tuberculosis is a disease of poverty, exacerbated by stigma, conflict, and migration.
Teresa, why should the world invest in TB, and why is that more important now than ever?
Investing in TB response is not only a global health issue, it's social, economic, and global health security imperative. Tuberculosis devastates economies. It affects people in their most productive ages. It increases significantly health care costs. It drains workforce. Unfortunately, millions of people with tuberculosis still don't have access to the life-saving treatment due to the chronic and significant funding gaps. For the first time in more than over a century, we have 16 vaccines candidates in the pipeline, and we know that vaccines could become game changers in the fight against TB. That's why urgent investments in TB research are required. Strengthening TB programs actually improves global pandemic preparedness. TB is an urgent crisis, but one we can end if we act now. The cost of inactions is measured in lives, and we can't afford to lose any more.
That was Science in 5 today. Until next time then, stay safe, stay healthy, and stick with science.
Eswatini TV has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Eswatini Communications Commission. We are committed to reporting news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that does not amount to hate speech or the description of gratuitous violence or explicit sex. For any complaints of our programming, please contact us on 2411-9600 or email info@eswatinitv.co.sz. You can also contact the Eswatini Communications Commission on 2406-7000 or write a letter to ECCOM on PO Box 7811 Mbabane. Email address is info@ecom.org.sz.
Right, welcome back. As I had mentioned earlier, it appears now that we are having technical difficulties in contacting a president of the Eswatini National Youth Cooperatives Alliance, with which we were scheduled to have a conversation on the importance or role of cooperatives in youth economic empowerment. We will, however, now cross over to updates coming in from the United Nations, whereas we'll start here. A briefing by Miroslav Jenka, Assistant Secretary General for Europe, Central Asia and Americas, Department of Political and Peace-Building Affairs and Peace Operations on maintenance of peace and security of Ukraine. Miroslav Jenka, Assistant Secretary General for Europe, Central Asia and the Americas, was speaking a day after the latest wave of Russian airstrikes across Ukraine, with at least 23 people killed in the capital, Kyiv.
Al señor Miroslav Jenka.
Muchísimas gracias, señor presidente. Mr. President, yesterday the Secretary General condemned the Russian Federation's overnight missile and drone attacks that killed and injured many civilians, including children, across Ukraine. According to Ukrainian officials, the Russian Federation launched 598 drones and 31 missiles against Ukraine overnight between 27 and 28 August. In the capital city of Kyiv, at least 23 people, including 4 children aged between 2 and 17, were reportedly killed. At least 64 people, including 7 children, were injured. Several buildings were damaged in 33 locations across all 10 districts of the city. Most of the fatalities occurred in the Darnitsky district of Kyiv, where a missile reportedly struck a 5-story residential building, demolishing it from the 1st to the 5th floor. The attack also severely damaged the diplomatic premises of the delegation of the European Union in Kyiv and the British Council building. Across Ukraine, air raid sirens kept residents awake, seeking shelter in nearly all regions of the country. Civilian casualties were reported in Chernihiv, Kharkiv, Zaporizhia, Donetsk, and Kherson regions of Ukraine. In Vinnytsia region, a Russian attack reportedly struck a train depot. Yesterday's strikes are only the latest in the brutal escalation of countrywide aerial attacks. Just a week ago, overnight between 21 and 22 August, Russia reportedly launched 574 drones and 40 missiles on Ukraine. As a result, 1 person was killed in the western city of Lviv. In the southwestern Transcarpathia region, 15 people were wounded. These strikes on regions far from the front lines demonstrate the dangerously expanding geographic scope of this war. In July, the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, OHCHR, recorded rising civilian casualties across 18 regions of Ukraine and in Kyiv city. With at least 1,674 civilian casualties, 286 killed, and 1,388 injured, July set a new tragic record for monthly casualties since May 2022. In total, OHCHR has verified that since the start of the Russian Federation's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, 14,054 civilians, including 730 children, have been killed in Ukraine. 36,164 civilians, including 2,263 children, have been injured. The impact of the conflict has also spread to the Russian Federation, where local authorities have reported civilian casualties, including in the Belgorod, Kursk, and Bryansk regions bordering Ukraine. On 24 August, Russian officials reported that the fire broke out after a Ukrainian drone was shot down near the Kursk nuclear power plant, damaging a transformer at the site. We have also several reports of Ukrainian strikes on oil refineries inside Russia. While the United Nations is not in a position to verify these reports, the growing impact of the conflict on the civilian population in the Russian Federation is of concern too. We once again reiterate that attacks against civilians and civilian infrastructure violate international humanitarian law. We condemn all such attacks wherever they occur. They are unacceptable and must end immediately. Mr. President, we are also concerned about the impact of the expanding and escalating fighting on the humanitarian situation in Ukraine as we are entering the fourth winter of the full-scale war. The United Nations remains fully committed to supporting Ukrainian civilians. So far this year, together with our humanitarian partners, we have reached 3.8 million people with aid. Furthermore, targeted winter support preparations are underway for 1.7 million people through the 2025-2026 Winterization Response Plan. However, for us to be able to continue our life-saving work, scaled up and flexible donor support is urgently needed. We also continue to urge the sides to fulfill their obligations under international humanitarian law and allow for the safe, rapid, and unimpeded humanitarian access to civilians in need, no matter where they are or who controls the territory. Mr. President, the mounting death toll and devastation caused by the intensifying fighting over the summer run counter to the significant efforts over the past few months to give diplomacy a chance. The Secretary General has welcomed the recent diplomatic efforts led by the United States, including the meeting between the Presidents of the United States and the Russian Federation in Anchorage on 15 August, and the meeting between the Presidents of the United States and Ukraine and European leaders in Washington, D.C. on 18 August. We have also welcomed the earlier 3 rounds of direct talks between Ukraine and the Russian Federation in Istanbul between May and July. We commend the exchanges of prisoners of war that have continued to take place as a result of these contacts. Most recently, on 24 August, an exchange facilitated by the United Arab Emirates brought 146 prisoners home from each side. However, as large-scale attacks against civilians persist and civilian casualties rise, the current diplomatic momentum is at risk of rapidly fading if the focus on the need to end the violence and engage in genuine peace talks is not maintained. We therefore urge all concerned to urgently de-escalate the situation and to redouble efforts to create conditions for inclusive diplomatic efforts towards a cessation of hostilities and a just peace. On Sunday, 25 August, Ukraine marked its 34th Independence Day. That day also marked 3.5 years of full-scale war for the people of Ukraine and Russia which has continued to be a source of instability regionally and globally. We renew the Secretary General's appeal for a full, immediate, and unconditional ceasefire. A ceasefire that results in a just, comprehensive, and sustainable peace in Ukraine, one that fully upholds Ukraine's sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity, in line with the UN Charter, international law, and relevant UN resolutions. The United Nations remains ready to support all efforts to this end. I thank you.
Agradezco al señor Yencha la declaración que nos ha proporcionado.
Right, we've just heard there from Miroslav Yencha, Assistant Secretary General for Europe, Central Asia and the Americas, speaking on the Russia-Ukraine war, saying large-scale attacks by Russia against civilians in Ukraine could see any hopes of a lasting peace deal rapidly fade, pleading for diplomacy to be given a chance. It is now 3 minutes before 8. Sophie, so interesting conversation you had there with the Minister of ICT. You know, she was just unpacking some of the initiatives by the ministry to take the Eswatini digital space to the next level. And while on that, I realized that we have the Eswatini International Trade Fair ongoing, and exhibitors have really answered to the call of digital transformation, from VR to AI and many other projects that are on display. This is quite interesting to see.
And I think it speaks to what she said when I asked her about what it is really that is, fueling the momentum within the ICT sector to emphasize the need for AI integration, for everyone to heed to the call for digital transformation. And she said it is becoming indispensable. And that is a great case study that every company that you see there, literally, you can see that ICT, AI, virtual reality, as you put it, is integrated in literally every store and every exhibitor there. So I suppose it is a great time because she also speaks about, the job opportunities that it presents, but also the solutions that it brings to our most immediate and urgent problems. So it's a great time for Eswatini. We are a small economy, and hopefully, we're able to meet all these other targets that we have. But the most beautiful thing is, as we celebrate everything that has been done, we already have new promises that we're looking forward to seeing culminate in 100 days in December.
In 100 days, a lot more coming for sure. It is exactly 8 minutes before 8.
It's 2 minutes before 8.
I'm getting it wrong. It's 2 minutes before 8, yeah.
100%. But yeah, speaking of things happening in the country, I think we enjoyed Butimba, even vicariously living through Emabutfo, that we're there from our studios, from the comfort of our homes, and again courtesy to Eswatini TV and the outside broadcast unit with what they have done in terms of broadcasting that. It was a really, really beautiful experience, and the whole world is talking about it because it is also on social media. It's permeated the whole world. It's beautiful indeed.
A busy weekend it was actually for the country. We also saw the 32nd edition of the Swazi Rally at the Riders Ranch. It's a pity I missed out on that one because I do have a liking for automotives.
Is it? Well, PTU, I'm really sorry. I love what they did. I love what they're doing for the tourism, in the country, but not really up my alley. But it was beautiful to see how excited the attendees are. People really love bikes, and you could feel it in the atmosphere. So many bikes. Even right here in Baban, you would see convoys and convoys. Yeah.
Right. A week full of activities ahead of us. One of them is the ongoing Eswatini International Trade Fair that you can be sure to pay a visit to in Manzini. While you do that, be sure to pay a visit to the Eswatini TV stand. Pavilion 5 specifically.
And you don't necessarily have to go there if you can't. You can still get in contact with Eswatini TV and you can be able to place your products in whatever way the marketing team is going to advise accordingly. But yeah, if you are making your way to the Manzini International Trade Fair at Mavuso Sports Center, do visit Pavilion 5. There you will enjoy what Eswatini TV has for you, but also what we spoke about with Minister Savannah. They are also there, the ICT hub. is there, and they're showcasing everything that she spoke about here.
And the clock has it. Our time is up. Until the next edition of Kusile Breakfast Show, do have yourself a lovely day.
This August, all roads lead to